I was born in a house on, I think it was 509 Knox Avenue North. And my grandparents lived, I guess, next door. And I don't remember any of that. But then they moved northeast, and I was still young there. And it wasn't until we moved southeast. We lived in two houses there, one right next door to the other. And at that time, my sister Margaret, well, my oldest brother was Barnaby, and he was, I would say, about 16 and a half years older than me. Margaret was 15 years older than me. And then Henry was about 14 years older than me. And then Irene was 4 years older than me. And then there was me. And we all lived in 313, and that's where my duck lived with us. And and it was kind of interesting because we never had a dog, and occasionally Dad would bring a dog home, and well, it would either throw up or make a mess, and then Dad would have to get rid of it. And
So you settled on ducks.
we had a pet duck that when I walked to school, we had a long driveway, and when I would walk to school, the duck would walk with me. And then when I got to the street, I'd tell him to go home, and then he'd go back walking, quack, quack, really disgruntled. We had to go back home. But my sister used to have him in the house, too. And my older sister, she's 15 years older, and when she was ironing, he would sit by her feet. And then when she'd go to put something someplace, he'd follow her around. So we didn't have dogs, we had ducks. Yeah, we had the one duck and occasionally the turkeys. But it was interesting. Years later, I was about in my teens when I found a little roll of film that was taken at that house. And it was by that little playhouse that we had. And there was pictures of Henry and Margaret and me, which was a sheer delight when I found it up in the attic of our house where the store was and had it developed. And I had, it was fun living there. A neighbor had a dog that used to send him to the store for things, and he'd go to the store and he'd come home with it in a bag. He would bring it. They must have called on the phone and, had him go get something, and I used to get such a kick out of that. But I started school there, and then we moved next door, and then that's when I had the terrible, terrible, terrible infected ear from measles. And it really did a number on me at that time. I was really, really sick, and there was nothing that they could do, no penicillin or anything. And so eventually that left me, but I had perforated eardrum and a lot of scar tissue in the one ear, and a lot of scar tissue in the other ear, but not perforated. But we lived there until I was in third grade, and we lived about a mile from my godmother, which is my mom's sister Lil. And we used to visit them. I remember trying my cousin's bike out, two-wheel bike, for the first time and hit a tree with it. And I gave that up until I didn't get a bike until I was 40 years old.
I bought it.
Yeah, you bought it.
Can't trust her.
And so we moved from there to the store then that we converted into a house. and that's where Mother had her garden and what have you. And my brother Barney, when I was 9 years old, went to Glen Lake Sanitarium for TB, and he was there. We used to go visiting him. I could never go up, but they had a deal where he could go outside
Kind of like a
on the
balcony.
roof, and there was a wall, and I could see him looking down, and he used to write to me, and finally I told him that I couldn't understand his writing, so then he started printing for me, and which was neat because they were so much more older than me, and I didn't have. I thought they were ancient when they were in their late 20s. I thought they were ready for the old people's home because I was so much younger. But well, then I moved there, and well, that's right. Margaret got married there too. She got married, and about the same time Barney went into the hospital. Her and Joe, my brother-in-law, they married there, and then we moved north, and then I went to St. Bridget's, went from a public school to a parochial, and they put me back a half a year. It seems to be the tradition. If you go from a public school, they put you back a half a year. And so I went to the parochial school, and that was different. I mean, they had a woman that would come in, and she would teach us different things for plays or poems and recital, and I enjoyed that. We used to call her the expression teacher because we learned expression and reading and what have you. And then there was Father Donahue. He was the pastor of the parish, and Irishman, and we used to see him walking down the street, going marching down the street, Father Donahue. And we all avoided him when it came time to go to confession because the whole church knew what you were getting.
Yeah, he was hard of hearing.
Okay. So we avoided him. We went to Father Albert all the time. But that was a fun time, the school. But I left there and I left there in sixth grade and went to Patrick Henry, and that was quite a bit further. I used to get my dad to drive me as much as I could because it was 2 miles away from where I lived, Patrick Henry. And then if it wasn't my dad, I'd walk 8 blocks and take the bus or streetcar at the time, to the end of the line, and that's where the school was. And when I went there, it was very hard because I left the school in sixth grade, and the grades went up to 8 there, and so I went there, and school was a little difficult for me, and so I started school there, and it was kind of lonely at first. I remember one day my mother and Margaret and my dad's sister, Auntie Annie, were going mushroom picking, and because I felt so bad because I didn't have friends now, and totally, and so they says, well, you can go mushroom picking with me, and I still remember that day. It was a fall day, and it was just fun to be hanging out with them that day, and my sister tried to console me. She said, when you get in 9th grade, she says, you can go to the vocational school and take up a trade there. Maybe you'd like that. Well, I put that in the back of my mind, but it wasn't long, and I belonged to 3 clubs and active in school, and forgot about going anyplace else. Yeah, senior high, I went on the work program, and I worked at Northwestern Hospital, and I used to take the streetcar or bus all the way out to 28th and Chicago from 44th and Penn north to go to work then. And I used to work in the dietary area, and on weekends we used to stay there a lot. There was a group of us, some kids from South High and what have you. We used to stay sleep down in the rooms downstairs, about 2 doors from the
Oh, my
morgue,
Lord.
and we used to spend the night because on Sunday morning, Sunday morning we had to get up at 6 and set the trays out and what have you. So I worked there during high school, and then after high school I worked at Brown's Photo for a while, and that's where I met Tom's sister, Marge. Henry, or Barnaby, was the oldest, and like I said, he had TB, and he was released, I think, after maybe 3 years there, and then he started working at Northern Ordnance during the war, and then Henry did too. My brother Henry married and to Vivian, and had a son, Larry, and then Margaret was in between there. Excuse me,
Yeah.
Margaret was the next. She ended up marrying Joe, and she married when we lived southeast, and then Henry married Vivian, and then we moved north into the school, not school, but the store building, which was our house then. And Margaret had one son, Lee, and he was a year older than our son, Dean, because Dean was our first child.
But Henry and Vivian divorced.
They divorced, and Henry married Beverly, and they had 3 children, Roger, Pam, and I knew it was
Carol.
Carol, yes. And then Irene married John, and they ended up going out to Portland, and now John has since passed away, and they had 2 boys, James and John, and a daughter, Lynn.
But they ended up in Seattle.
And Irene is living in Bellevue, Washington now. And her boys are out there, and her daughter's in Fargo.